These 102.9 is WHYL Carlisle.
It's time now for the Real Estate Radio Guy with real estate broker John Rainville. For the next hour, you'll learn everything about national real estate topics, trends, and news revolving around Central PA. It's sponsored by GSF Mortgage Corporation, EnviroQuest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. And now, here's the Real Estate Radio Guy, John Rainville.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's a wonderful day out here in Pennsylvania. Very green on the way in today, wasn't it, Kingsley? I mean, it's really starting to green up down here in our area.
It's beautiful. I can't complain. Although I wasn't expecting the thunderstorm last night, so as I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and realized the windows were down in my car. Yeah.
Hey, we got an exciting show today. So we've got Roger Ziders from PEST. We're going to be talking about what bugs you. Okay, things, exterminating business. Interesting things. I had a chat with him the other day on the phone, and certain things that I thought they did, he says, no. So I learned something already. So that's going to be interesting. And then, of course, later on in the show, we're going to have John Stas from EnviroQuest. And John's got a mystery topic today.
Ooh.
Where's Waldo?
Love where's
that one weekend he was in New Orleans. He told us he was in SpongeBob land. But hey, we're going to be talking then, obviously about the real estate market, things that are going on. Interest rates, properties are still moving like off the shelf so fast. In some states, the average market time right now is under 30 days. Here in Pennsylvania, we're under 45 days.
Wow.
That's huge. Huge.
Well, and people, when you tell them to buy and put an offer in, they kind of drag their feet, and they're finding out real quick that those houses are going off the market.
Oh, yeah.
Or in multiple offer situations, and they still think they're able to put in, $50,000 under market value. It's just not working.
Right. They're finding out that the house that they look at today, somebody looked at 2 days ago, and they're writing an offer on it. So
and
you got to move fast.
There's so little inventory. We had a client, I want to say about a week ago, and it was one of those perfect HUD homes. We've talked about it many times. Take advantage, jump on it. And there was just one little thing, little issue wrong with the house, and they dragged their feet, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And that was a house that probably had, after you did maybe $10,000 worth of work, probably about $60,000, $70,000 in equity net.
Really? That was a good one. Why didn't we buy that? Oh, damn. Al, we could have written it up. Our producer's got a lot of money he hid under his mattress.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Now I'm going to say, yeah.
He's laughing over
So we're paying him too much then, I guess, is what we're doing.
Yeah, I know. Big Dog Productions back there. All right. Well, I see we've got a good bit of listeners on our Facebook page. And, hey, I appreciate you guys there. Please share us out there so we continue to grow. We had a good show last week. Over 400 people, watched our entire video last week.
And next week, I believe,
hopefully,
I believe, I'll see what I can do. We've been playing with some software to at least maybe make this Facebook experience a little bit more, a little bit
flashy.
More flashy. There you go. Sexy. There you go.
Yeah, we're going to look more like a TV show on there.
Exactly.
It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, we've got some software and hardware and stuff we get to play with this week and see if we can get it all to work together. So
yeah, I know. It's going to be so cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I see Mr. Frundell's watching us. Sarah Smith is up in the Poconos. My sister Rain's on there. Wow. Thanks, guys. All right. So we've got Roger Ziders from PEST sitting on the phone right now, and we're going to bring Roger on. Roger, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well. Good talking to you.
Yeah, it's good. Fantastic. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and PEST? Because I wasn't really aware until I went to your website, was pulling things up, that you guys are family owned and operated, and your coverage area and that. Can you tell us a little bit first before we get into things just about you and PEST?
Sure. Well, my sister and I actually own the company, so that's the local family-owned company base. We took over the company back a little over 7 years ago. Have been doing phenomenally well since then. But our experience goes back all the way back into the 80s. Give you an idea, age here, about 32 years ago, first job I ever had was drilling holes for termite work. So the experience goes back a little ways, and my sister actually has more experience in the business than I do. At that time, she was already the Pennsylvania Regional Secretary for that same big company.
Wow.
So we go back a little ways. About 7 years ago or so, we took over PEST and have just been exploding with it, doing very well.
So what area here, I mean, you know, we're based here out of central Pennsylvania. What areas do you cover?
Well, we primarily cover the distance between like Palmyra and Carlisle, that general vicinity.
Okay. And now do you go down to York, to the south? How far do you go south?
Well, we'll go down into, we primarily try to stay in Dauphin, Cumberland County area.
Okay.
We'll dip a little bit southern, a little bit south of there, but primarily we like to stay in the Dauphin, Cumberland counties.
Okay, so like Lewisberry, Adders, that's in your realm.
Yeah, that's about as low as we'd like to go, yeah.
Okay.
And there's a hillbilly upcharge for Lewisberry?
Not quite, no.
So, Roger, how did you get started in this? Were you just one of those kids with the magnifying glass burning the ants on the sidewalk in the summer? How did you really get attracted to the pest business and that?
Well, it's as simple as it was one of those things that sounded like a good idea at the time. Because my sister was already working for the company, she actually got me my first job when I was 16. It was a summer job drilling those holes for termite work. Later on, when I got out of the military, went back to work for that company for a while. So that kind of experience just kind of developed and grew over the years. The original owner of PEST, he retired from the business about 7 years ago. Both my sister and I knew him from the 80s, and she worked for him from the 90s on, working in the office. And when he decided it was time to retire, we just told him, don't tell anybody else. Let's sit down and talk. And we took over. So it was kind of an opportunity. It wasn't a lifelong mission or anything.
So throughout those years then, you were drilling holes for termites. Where did you gain your knowledge with, stink bugs and bees and rodents and the rest of it? I mean, is it something that you just kind of learned along the way? Is it a schooling that you went to or classes? How did all of that come about?
Well, in pest control, to be certified, you do have to have ongoing education. So there's always that kind of accrues and builds over the years. But mostly it's self-desire, self-learning, experience as you go, and just kind of picking things up as you go along. Definitely experience is the key to, really any business, but pest control experience helps a lot.
So speaking of experience here in the last 10 years or so, stink bugs have been, I think, a big topic of conversation. When we bought our house maybe about 5 years ago, we pulled up the carpet and there was 1,000 of them in our home. Is that common? Do they just hide in the walls? Is that something you're called out on occasion, or?
Well, I'll tell you, back in 2010, that was kind of the benchmark year where everybody had a problem with stink bugs. Now, since that time, Mother Nature's kind of self-correcting. There are birds and there are other species that are feeding on stink bugs now. So we're starting to get more of that natural balance, and that's what it takes. Now, stink bugs, they do not live in your house. They can't survive in your house. In fact, if they come in, it's a fatal mistake. What we consider comfortable as far as the humidity level is the Sahara Desert to them, and they're going to dehydrate and die on their own within 2-3 days. But in the fall, when the temperatures drop below 50 degrees, really hitting around 45, it kicks in that instinct for the stink bug to find a place to survive the winter. And they're attracted to the sheer walls from, where they're originally from over in the Orient. But here, we don't really have cliffs or anything, so they're attracted to the sheer walls of our houses. And any crack or crevice, any opening around windows, siding, the fascia, the soffit, they're going to find those holes. And they're going to get inside behind the siding. and they huddle in pockets of dozens or sometimes hundreds of them, and they insulate each other from the winter, and then in the spring, they start emerging and coming out. Now, during the coldest parts of the winter, some of them are going to feel warmth leaching out through the walls, and they'll come through the walls all the way through into the living area, and that's why sometimes you see stink bugs during the winter. But again, they cannot live inside your house. They cannot infest your house. They're going to die naturally of just dehydration.
Interesting. Didn't know that. I learn something new every day. So in the spring here then, what would be your number one pest call?
Well, I tell you, this spring is it is exploding out there. The number one issue in the spring is usually ants. Ants are going to build up, and we get that big spring push of ant activity. There's also termite swarmers in the spring, and that's the first indication for most homeowners that they have a termite problem, is seeing those swarmers. There's carpenter bees, a lot of activity this time of year. But I tell you, this year is just phenomenally large. There's just an overpopulation of everything outside. And it really stems from the climate is changing. I'm not a politician to tell you why, but I can look out the window, and when we're mowing grass weekly in Pennsylvania into November, things are changing. And those lower life forms that base their lives off of vegetation and perfect conditions, well, their numbers are just exploding. So we're just getting so much activity, so many more generational cycles for everything outside. And there's just an overpopulation of everything, from the smallest of the ants all the way up to a black bear. There's just literally more of everything. So we've been just very busy year-round, just kind of trying to balance out that overpopulation outside and making people more comfortable in their homes.
So you obviously come in to try and handle some of these pest issues. Is it done chemically? Are there natural alternatives? Are there, what do they call
Let's talk about termites. I mean, because in our business, obviously, a lot of the times we have a wood-destroying insect inspection done by somebody from John Stas or somebody, and they find termites, and then somebody like PEST comes in to take care of it. Roger, can you tell us how some of that occurs? I mean, I've seen the mud tubes on the walls in the basement and that, but how do you actually treat for that?
Well, the treatment for termites, there's really two basic types of treatment for termite. There's the classic chemical liquid treatment that's been done for decades. Prior to the early 80s, the only product really used was chlordane, and that's been illegal since, over 35 years now. In the 80s, they came out with other products like Dursban, that's were deterrent treatments. You've heard the old saying, you chased them to the neighbor's house. Well, actually, in the 80s, that was accurate. In the 90s, it went to more water-based products so that it wasn't leaching away and polluting waterways and wells. Those products weren't the best in the 90s. Now, in the late 90s, products called Termidor hit the market and pretty much revolutionized liquid treatments back to the old days, where we would just do one treatment, the problem would go away, and you're going to get years and years of protection from it reoccurring again. But a chemical treatment is really the most efficient and long-lasting treatment to deal with termites. I've heard and seen many other more green-type treatments, and unfortunately, they just don't have the efficiency. They don't have the effectiveness to really, truly correct the problem and give defensive power for many years to come. One of the alternative products out there that was developed in the 90s to complement the liquid treatments that, again, weren't that great in the 90s are what's called bait stations. And bait stations are really, let me see how to phrase this. They're really pushed heavily by the bigger companies because they can be very profitable. But I've had customers even call the Department of Agriculture and ask them about them. And they were told that, and I agree, bait stations just aren't the most efficient or effective way to address a termite problem.
So I think we've seen those sometimes out of a commercial building, where they have these big black plastic boxes. What's actually in there? What do you use for bait for a termite?
Well, excuse me. A lot of the black boxes that sit above grade around a commercial building, those are actually rodent bait stations to defend against rats and mice and things around the outside of a building. The bait stations for termites are kind of flat, and if you pulled one out of the ground, they look like big plastic thumbtacks. A lot of times they're just monitoring stations, and they hold like just a little sliver of white pine. And when activity is observed, it's replaced with an actual bait, and it's a saturated piece of termiticide that the termites would feed on, carry back to the colony, and eradicate the colony in that manner. The problem is they're just not very efficient, and a termite needs an 1/8 of an inch gap to gain access to a house. These bait stations can be placed 6 to 12 feet apart, so it can be years before they're detected. But the liquid treatments that we do is just a one-time treatment, and it's just so much more efficient and effective.
Is it the same for ants?
Well, let me kind of explain that. If you notice all pest control companies, typically it'll say pest control and termite and pest control. And the easiest way to explain that is termites that we're dealing with here in Pennsylvania are subterranean termites. So the treatment is actually below grade. You're injecting product into the soil around the foundation line around the property. Everything else is pest control, which is above grade. So the treatment above grade for anything really doesn't impact termites. And a termite treatment below grade really has no impact on anything above grade. So a termite treatment really isn't an effective ant treatment. But ant treatments, that's a whole another topic.
I know a topic that's going to be, is going to be start coming up in the news now is, do you do anything for mosquitoes? Because, that's a big concern with that West Nile virus, and that, do you do any type of outdoor pest control?
Well, mosquito is the hot topic lately. With the weather changing outside, just like last night, we're getting some type of precipitation almost weekly. And that's what's keeping all the vegetation green and growing longer through the season. But that constant moisture is also the breeding source of mosquitoes, and their populations are just exploding everywhere also. There is a huge concern with West Nile outbreak. We're not experiencing too much Zika up north yet, but they are down south, and it's a fear that will migrate north. So to balance that out, we are actually this year introducing a mosquito program. And it's a process of spraying the vegetation around the outside of a house. Primarily, the biggest season for mosquitoes is going to be May, June, July, and August, the hotter parts of the year. So we're introducing a mosquito program for those 4 months, and it's a monthly program that treats the outside perimeter of the property to balance that overpopulation of mosquitoes, to give people relief so that they can go back out into the backyard and enjoy their backyard a little bit.
So that's something our listeners could call, and I guess you guys could probably come out and do an estimate based on how big their
Absolutely.
yard is or whatever. Okay, that's I didn't know that.
So here's the question. How big of an area do you think you could, is it almost like a force field-ish?
A force field.
A force field.
Okay, I know what you were watching
you
last
spray
night.
100 square feet, and they just don't like to fly in that vicinity, or
Put
what?
up the shield,
Yeah,
Scotty.
Well,
turn it on.
I wish I had that magic wand, but that doesn't exist. It would make my job a lot easier. But what it is the products that we're using are more of a synthetic pyrethrin, so that if the insects do land, basically a mosquito waits underneath the leaves of vegetation waiting for a host to come by. And when they sense that host, they're going to release and come after to get a blood meal.
Sneaky bastard.
So the spray is on an upward spray, the bottom of the vegetation around the property, so that when they land in those areas, they're exposed to the product and they have a bad day. We also mix in a insect growth regulator that restricts their ability to reproduce and mature and breaks down the reproductive cycle. So all of this combined reduces the populations around the house to make it much more enjoyable.
I know another, problem that I worry about at my house is ticks. Is that can you do anything for that? I mean, we're like I have used my little indentured servants, to make sure we get rid of all the leaves or anything that anywhere near the house because we have 2 dogs, and I just don't want the ticks.
You let them out of the basement?
This is going to be a really bad year for ticks. If we keep getting, again, this precipitation every week, it is going to be phenomenally bad. It already is. We're already getting a lot of phone calls of tick activity and people asking what can be done. And it's really a twofold process. Really, any kind of pest control issue is going to work better when we work together. There's some things I can do, but I'm going to need the homeowner to help out and do some things too. And with ticks, it's as simple as keeping all the vegetation trimmed down as low as possible. Don't let grass grow up high. Keep it maintained, and that restricts their ability to rise up on that vegetation to hitch a ride. And then we come in and we can do a granular or a spray treatment to knock down the tick control or the tick population to control them. The granular can soak down into the soil, disrupting the breeding cycle, and make it much more enjoyable and safer around the house. The problem with ticks is no matter what we do, we can't control Mother Nature. So squirrels, rabbits, even deer, everything else that comes through the property can transfer adult ticks in. So you can't eliminate them 100%, but you can definitely make the property much more enjoyable and safer.
Does that treatment also take care of fleas by any chance?
It will have that effect, yes.
Okay, so it's like a twofold. It probably takes care of some other pests.
So it sounds like I need about 5 different sprays for my backyard to just spray everything down, and then hopefully everything will just be gone. At least in that little, that little section.
I think it's like in Mexico. I think you have to have the guys come around with that fogger every morning.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. So my big issue, and I'm lucky enough not to have the ticks and everything, but I have actually come up with my very own method of combating borer bees, carpenter bees.
Okay, go ahead.
So I went out to the dollar store, and I got one of those big, long, yellow wiffle ball bats. And
that
typically,
is the most entertaining way to do it. I agree.
And like every day, I go out and have some batting practice, and maybe 5 or 6, in a little segment. The problem is they just come back. They hover. So they're in the wood. How do you get rid of these things? I mean, if they're in the wood, do we have to inject the wood or
I usually just chew some gum and then stick it in that hole once the bee goes in there.
So,
that could be a temporary effect, yes. Let me explain carpenter bees real quick, and then it makes sense of what the treatment is. Every spring, we're dealing with female carpenter bees that are boring holes into the wood and laying a series of eggs, each one barricaded off with its own food supply. So you see a lot of spring activity with the carpenter bees. And then in midsummer, you don't see so much. And then at the end of summer, you start to see the activity again. Well, the end of summer activity, those are the hatchlings coming out. Now, the next spring, we're going to have multi-generations coming back, reusing that same board, that same hole sometimes, and expanding the boring, the bore into the wood. So every year it compounds and gets bigger and bigger, and that's why it just doesn't go away. So what can we do about it? Well, one of the ways is to dust inside those holes so that when the bees go in or then come out later, they're exposed to the products and they have a bad day. But that doesn't stop a new bee from coming and boring a hole right next to it. So one of the other things that we do is a liquid spray around the exposed wood, around the active areas. That way it protects the boards that haven't been drilled into yet. So that is the most effective way, is a combination or the liquid spray, depending on the situation. But timing is critical. And had we had this conversation and did a treatment 2-3 weeks ago, we would have really good results. But every week that goes by now, we've already missed some of them, and those females have already laid eggs inside the wood. So there's really not a whole lot we can do about them except hope for some results at the end of the season. But that early spring treatment before the bees show up will have phenomenal results through the whole season then.
And then it would cut down the population going into the fall as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
So at what point, these borer bees, it's not exactly a termite, but, after you get, different families? You go outside and on the deck, it seems like there's 4 different, bees hovering there.
Oh.
And just kind of protecting their hole, so to speak.
Well, there are males and females, and they're doing their dance out there, and then the females are fertilized, and that's where she's boring the holes to lay the eggs. And every year, you're getting that multi-generation coming back. So every year it does get bigger and bigger. They're all the same kind of bloodline, but they just keep expanding. It's kind of like a salmon going back to the same little stream to spawn. They're going to come back and reuse that same board. But a proper treatment, you'll have really good results. Absolutely. The other thing to keep in mind is the male carpenter bee does not even have a stinger, so they're really harmless. The female does, but you really have to earn to get stung by her. You can smack her out of the air with your hand, and she's just going to fly away. They're not aggressive at all.
So a bat would do it, too.
Oh, yeah, that's the entertainment factor. Yeah,
and you couldn't see it, Roger. I was showing him something that I'd found on the internet. It's like a salt gun that you can use to shoot flies out of the air at your house. You fill it up with table salt, and then it shoots them down with it.
That's interesting.
But it's brought up an interesting topic. What about house flies? Is that something that somebody would have you come out to take care of? Because I know sometimes they get pretty bad.
Well, it all depends on the species of the fly. There are many different species, and when we treat for flies, what we really try to do is find out what kind of fly it is, to find out what the real source is. Because there are flies that will only breed in decomposing flesh, like a dead animal. There are other flies that will only breed in like sewage. And the list goes on and on. So we really have to come out and identify what the species is so that we know what the source is so that we can treat effectively.
So a dog in the backyard making his weekly bank deposits would probably be like a breeding ground for flies.
For specific species of flies, absolutely. And when we come out and take a look and say that we have soldier flies, then yes, we have a backyard waste problem. We correct that, we correct the fly issue.
So most of what we've been talking about so far is really geared towards a homeowner.
Yes.
But I'm assuming that you also do commercial work too, correct?
That is correct, yes. We do many different commercial types of all types, large warehouses to countless restaurants, churches, daycares, doctor's offices, everything in between. Mm-hmm.
And I know you and I were chatting the other night because I thought some things were things that you would take care of, and you told me, no, that's wildlife. So
yes.
What sort of things, all right, so rodents like a mouse or a rat you would take care of, or is that wildlife?
No, once they infest inside the home, that's a pest control issue. There is a big difference between wildlife and pest control, and there are some companies that dabble in both. I'm a company that specializes in pest control. There are companies who specialize just in wildlife. Honestly, I just stay too busy doing what I'm good at to babysit a trap, trying to catch a squirrel.
What if it's in the house?
But when we get into squirrels and groundhogs and skunks, and that's just wildlife, and it's better left to handle by somebody who specializes in that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I had an apartment building where there was a squirrel living up in the ceiling, and I had no way to get it out.
Yeah,
they can cause thousands of damage, absolutely.
We've had bats in one of our rental units, and now that's a protected species.
Bats is a protected species?
Bats is a protected species, buddy.
They are very beneficial. The mosquito control that they give is so beneficial to the area. And again, the natural way of dealing with things is always the better choice. But when that doesn't work, then you need the prescription strength of a real pest control company.
So, if you don't mind, I want to go off topic just a hair. Maybe
Sure.
You've seen on the news recently that the bee population especially in our area, but mainly around the world, has really dropped.
Yeah.
Does that in any way? I mean, we all know the implications of not having bees in the world, but has pest control or different products when they go through and use different chemicals have any sort of effect on this population? And when you pick a chemical, are things like that thought of in the background?
Absolutely, everything is always thought of in the background. And the biggest thing we try to do is try to effectively control the actual target pest and have a reduced or no impact on anything outside that target. So when we do a treatment, we definitely are keeping honeybees in mind. I personally use honey every morning, so it's vital to my life too. I've read many reports on what is causing colony collapse of the honeybees, and it goes back and forth to many different ways, and pesticides are part of that list, and it is something to be concerned with. So we don't arbitrarily, and like you mentioned before, walking around the property with a big fogger, just fogging everything down. Well, that has huge secondary impacts, and that can really affect the bee populations. So we definitely take that in mind. We treat according to control the target, but we don't over-treat that we have that secondary impact. That's vital to our environment.
Another question, what about bed bugs? I know Al here wants to know about bed bugs.
Well, that's a topic we could talk about for hours on just that. Is there something specific that you want to touch?
Usually I see it like when it comes on the news that, some hotel or motel, that all of a sudden they've got a bed bug infestation.
That was a big issue in New York City for probably a good year or two. And we were afraid to go to any of them because of that issue.
Really? Now, do people get them in their houses too?
Absolutely. I have treated everything you can imagine for bed bugs. I've treated doctors' offices, retail stores, commercial office cubicles, 50 some of them at a time, countless homes, from anything from assisted living all the way up to multi-million-dollar estates. I've treated them all for bed bugs. Bed bugs exist. We cannot avoid them.
Where do they come from?
They're not on. Well, as long as man has had a bed, we've been dealing with bed bugs, and that's just a fact. They were something that was just kind of normal, like going out and getting bit by a mosquito. It was just something that exists. And prior to our generations, prior to World War II, those things were everywhere. Our grandparents grew up with them, and these things just existed. But after World War II, with the heavy use of insecticides, we actually eradicated them from our country. But they still existed in third world countries and elsewhere. So we grew up not knowing that they existed, not knowing that these things were real. They were just part of the nursery rhyme. Don't let the bed bugs bite. But in the 90s, when the economy started to explode and worldwide travel just became the norm, and business travel and all of this intercommerce travel through the country and through the world brought bed bugs back into the United States at a time when we couldn't use those heavier products that were used in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and 70s. So the problem came back, reintroduced into the country when we didn't have the big guns that were available back prior to us knowing that these things existed. So in the 90s, they were reintroduced back into the United States, and they are just everywhere now that you can imagine. It's not on the news as much because it's not news anymore. It's normal.
Is there a way to avoid it? Maybe are there certain precautions you can take to? Aside from hiring a Maria and having them clean daily. What can you do?
Well, there's definite steps to take, and the best thing anybody can do is be educated on what it is, what to look for. Google the images, know what they look for. The adults are the size of an apple seed and about the same size on one side, but when you turn them sideways, they're as thin as a piece of paper, and they can slip into the cracks between the joints of wooden furniture and the tufts of fabric. They can be a little difficult to find, but if you know what to look for, that is the best line of defense. There are steps that can be made when you travel, going into a hotel room, definitely don't put your clothes into the dresser. Keep the luggage elevated on a luggage stand, or better yet, put it in the tub where the bed bugs aren't going to be. Inspect the room before you get comfortable. Pull the sheets off the mattress. Look for the spotting. Look for the little indication signs. If you see them, don't stay in that room. Don't stay in the room next to it either, but you don't have to leave the hotel. Again, these things exist. It's just a fact of life. But the more education you have on them and what to look for, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
So there really is no way to avoid them. I mean, they're just going to show up. I mean, there's nothing I can do to prevent them from showing up in my house. It's just a fact of life. Or we haven't come across that way yet.
That's pretty close to accurate. These things exist, and anytime we are around other people or where other people recently were, we're susceptible to a transfer. It can happen at any time, almost anywhere. If you go to a waiting room, if you go to the movie theater, anywhere where the general public sits and sits still for a period of time, they can transfer off of the host person, and then when you sit down, they can transfer onto you. There's no way to 100% protect yourself.
Makes me think about going anywhere from now on.
Try my job, yes.
So, Roger, if somebody wants to, get this Oasis spray, which, might be, a good tagline.
If you're going to put that volcano pool in,
I'm going to need Oasis spray. Yes, I am. So, how does someone get a hold of you if they wanted to schedule a consultation, or what it may cost for Oasis spray or any rodent or termite? What's the best number to contact you on?
The best thing to do is call my sister. Call into the office at 540-5554. Talk to Lisa. She's going to make you comfortable no matter what your problem is. Schedule an appointment. I'll come out, take a look, educate you on what the real problem is, give you options of what to do, and if you want to go with the pest control route, I'll give you that option, and we can take care of that for you, too.
And do you have a website?
Yes, penpestcontrol.com.
How about Facebook?
They do.
Yes. We are on with
LLC.
Penpest. Yes,
Penpest
LLC.
There we go.
And we have links to both of those on our website already, and we'll put that out. We'll put that out again. And Roger, we really appreciate it. We're going to get you a copy of the show. We'll get you an MP3 and everything of it. Really appreciate you giving us our time to educate us and our listeners. A little bit more about what you do and.
The real way to actually take care of borer, bees, and pests. Right, exactly.
I don't know the bat.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. So, hey, you have a great weekend. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
That was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary to think that you can't do anything about bed bugs. But, now that I go into a movie theater now, I'm going to bring in, like a little can of spray and spray down my seat and the whole 9 yards, because you don't know what you're going to get.
Well, and my wife Betty, she loves to put everything in those drawers. I'm a guy, I mean, it can stay in my backpack, it can stay in my suitcase.
Mine stays in my suitcase. I throw it on the bed until it's time to sleep. Then I throw it on the floor.
It's just too much work to
apparently that's not
put it in the drawers. Heck,
For
I
a
do
few
that.
days?
Yeah, that's right. I think they give you those laundry bags, so I just put the dirty in that.
I don't plan on spending any time there anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I know we have John Stas online. I don't know where Waldo is today.
Where is Waldo?
So, Mr. Stas, where are you today?
You guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Is the window down? It sounds like you're driving somewhere.
I am.
Wow.
The window's up.
Oh, the window's up. Boy, I hear that Batman hearing. So, all right. So we're going to have to somehow throughout this segment guess where you are or on your way to. And the only reason we got it the last time was because you had your GPS way up. So we're going to have to try different signs today. I understand we've got a mystery segment today.
Now he's going to actually talk about what he does in a home inspection, looking for like termites and things like that. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah, picking right up with the last guest. Did you guys ever see the movie Pacific Heights?
Yes. It's a great real estate.
For anybody
movie.
who's a landlord or dealing with a pest control subject, you got to watch that movie. So
there, I got that on
I think they're in one of those people have since moved into one of Kingsley's units. He's still trying to get rid of them.
Unbelievable. Seriously, maybe there's some tips on this show on how to get it to work? Except the laws, I think, have changed. Since.
If you haven't seen it, you got to Netflix it this weekend.
All right.
Okay, there's a clue. 18-wheeler. So when we do a home inspection, we're going into a home where we may not have information from the seller. We don't have any of the paperwork regarding whether it's been treated before. So we got to pay real close attention to what we can visually see at the property. So we look on the outside of the home. This time of year especially, the termites are coming out. The warmer weather, they're coming up to the surface. So when we do a home inspection, we'll go through the mulch on the outside. And a lot of times, if the house does have a termite infestation, we'll dig through the mulch and we can actually find the termites in the tan bark or whatever mulch they have on the outside.
Interesting. Now, my mother was just over last night and picked up this little bug and said, looks like a termite. Kind of threw it out. I didn't get a chance to really get a good look at it, but
You better get John to stop.
I might have to look a little closer tonight.
So inside, what are some of the signs that you're looking for some of these wood-destroying insects?
Yeah, so on the inside, if the basement's unfinished, we'll look really carefully at the band joists and the structural members that are exposed, the wood structural members. We'll look for signs of what are called mud tubes. And what the mud tubes are, that's a pathway that the termite colony will make. They don't like light, so they'll tunnel through the wood, and they'll make these mud tubes to keep them in the dark, so to speak, and as they make their pathway to find their food sources, which would be the house. So we look for these mud tubes. One of the interesting things about termites is if you ever look at, if you cut a tree down, you have the rings on the tree. They'll dig between the rings. They won't go through most of the time they won't go through the actual ring part. So they'll go long ways through the wood. So the interesting thing about that topic is you can have a piece of trim or a piece of woodwork that's got the paint on it. The termite will go long ways through the wood and not even break the paint. So then you have a screwdriver or something. As we're looking for these termites, one of the things we do is we'll probe we'll actually probe the wood, and you can have a layer of paint that's intact, but behind the paint, the wood's all destroyed because the termites go long ways and don't cross over the cellulose part of the wood.
That's like 2 devious bugs now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of just staying under the radar.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Yeah, they stay under the radar. Another thing we look at is we'll, carefully examine the home, go up in the attic, go in through the basement. Sometimes you get some debris in your basement. We'll find little piles of, bug parts from, spiders, various bugs in the house, and we look through those really carefully. To look for signs of ants that may be like carpenter ants, wings from termite swarmers. So we'll look at those real carefully to look for any signs of wood-destroying insects in the home. One of the things we look at is if we find carpenter ants, dead or alive anywhere in the house, that's a good sign that the house may need to be treated for carpenter ants.
Speaking of which, John, a little bone to pick. First of all, when you go out to a house as an inspector and you're looking for signs, let's say just to do a pest or a wood inspection or a pest inspection, when you see signs that at some point there was either A, wood-boring bees, or B, in this particular case, a wood-boring, I never heard of them, beetles, or termites.
Powder post beetles.
Or termites. is there a way for you, and the reason I bring this up is, let's say we've got a homeowner that at some point in the past has had some sort of infestation that was treated. Is there a way when you come in and you say, oh, look, there are signs that there have been some pest issues with your house, whether it be, oh, look, here's signs of a borer bee or a beetle. Is there a way to tell whether or not it's a past or present issue?
Sure. With the termites, it's a lot of times it's a little more easy. When they do a termite treatment, they'll knock down like any visible mud tubes. So we can say, oh, there was a mud tube there, somebody knocked it down. There'll be drill marks like on the exterior concrete or on the interior concrete. We see the drill marks. A lot of times there'll be a sticker of the treatment and the date on the electric panel cover. It gets a little more tricky with some of the wood-boring beetles. Older homes especially, before lumber was kiln-dried. Nowadays, most of the modern lumber that you buy at the lumber store, Home Depot, Lowe's, or any lumber distributor, is going to be kiln-dried, where they expose it to a heat process, which kills a lot of these beetles or bugs or critters that may be in there. Some of the older homes, they were built with wood that wasn't kiln-dried, so you actually had these beetles that were living in the wood for a certain amount of time, and so you get these holes from the wood-boring beetles or from powder post beetles. Sometimes, especially with powder post beetles, it's real tough to tell if they're active because it just is tough. The only way to really do it is to take a picture of it and then look at the picture a little bit later, like 6 months later, and see if it's changed with some of these beetles. The powder post beetles, try to make an assessment. Is it fresh sawdust that comes out of the hole? Is it old? But sometimes it is pretty tough. You see a lot of the, a house from the 1800s is almost certainly going to have some sort of beetle holes. And so we just try to make a determination, using our best judgment.
Well, that's that's the question that makes it tough because, say, for example, we're doing a VA loan, and as you know, for a VA loan, that certificate is required in order to get a VA loan.
Yeah.
So if there was ever signs of anything in the past, is an inspector going to sign off on a certificate and say, well, this looks like it's old, but I'm not sure? In which case, at that point, you're going to say, this should be treated just to kind of be sure. But I guess the question is how do you stop that cycle? If you buy a house and, today and 5 years ago you want to refinance, am I going to have to go through the same thing again because there's signs of past issues? Or is there a way to, stop the cycle, if you will, and show that it's been done and treated in X amount of time?
Yeah, it's tough, and it comes down to the experience and judgment of the inspector a lot of times. But one thing I would recommend is that if you're getting that treatment, keep the paperwork. So, there can be disclosure, hey, we had this treated already, and but it's still tough, because the inspector doesn't know, hey, since it's been treated, have they come back? That's the big question. So I would say, if you are in that situation where you have an older home and you are required to treat it, keep all that relevant paperwork to disclose to the buyer, and then that could be helpful when trying to make that determination.
And then that would be the next question. Typically, when you do a treatment, what is the lifespan of the treatment?
Yeah, we don't actually do the treatments. We do the inspections. But I know, I think for VA, I believe in the paperwork, they require the treatment for termites specifically to be less than 5 years old, right? Isn't that correct?
Yeah, typically 5 years. So we ran into that issue where it was just at the 5-year mark, and I know a previous inspector that did it wasn't comfortable on signing off because it was that far into, and they weren't really sure. It seemed like there may have been some reinfestation. So just having that paperwork doesn't necessarily give you a clean slate or a free pass, but from my understanding, the treatment should, on average, last about 5 years.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with, a simpler building where there's good access. The pest control applicator, they can get a good access. They get a good bit of chemical in there. It's going to be a good treatment. It lasts longer. Situations where there's limited access, maybe a structure on the outside, a patio or something, where they're going to have a harder time getting a good barrier of chemical around that house. It might not last as long. It also depends on what chemicals they're using. Certain chemicals are more effective than others. One interesting point, especially with older homes, we see like repurposed wood being used, like where you can tell because of the notching on the wood. Maybe this wood was part of a barn or something, and then 100 years ago the barn was raised, and they take that wood and reuse it into a new structure, or it's an old structure now, but new at the time that it was repurposed. So you see damage on that wood that may have been from when it was on a previous structure. It may not even be relative to the current structure, which is pretty interesting.
John, I have a question. Thinking about Kingsley's mulch. So when he gets home today, should he go and pull all that mulch away that he's got banked up against the side of his house?
Yeah, you don't want it touching the side of your house, at least. You want to, that's one of the things we look at is wood-to-wood contact. If you have, vinyl siding or something where you have a wood structure behind it, and you have your mulch piled up over that, that gives a pathway for the termites to enter.
So when he gets home today, how far should he pull that mulch back? How far should he, like 6 inches, 3 inches?
Yeah, about 3 to 4 inches of clearance you want. So you don't want that soil to wood contact or mulch to wood contact.
John, he is giving you an evil look right now.
Well,
trying to make some work for you, isn't he?
He is, but what he doesn't realize is I've already taken that step. Okay, preventative measures. I did away with mulch and grass and put in patios. I don't have any of that. I don't have to mow it. Nothing in the front yard. It's all patio.
I went to stone a few years
that's
ago.
awesome.
Yeah, because then I don't have to worry about any of that.
Right.
But thanks, John, for almost giving me another to-do list. Appreciate that on a nice day like today.
All you have to do is go home and watch Pacific Heights again.
I don't think I ever saw it.
You've got to watch it. It's a classic.
Yeah. Who was in the movie? Anybody like famous, or was it just
The Tenants from Hell are in that movie.
Yeah,
well, I know them very well.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to recognize them.
Okay, all right. We're going to have to watch that. All right. So, what else we got?
Well, are you going to...
Any other questions about...
Well, no, I guess not. I mean, because you go in, you don't do the treatment yourself. You're going to go in and do the inspection, right?
Right, somebody like Pen Pest, would come out and do the treatment.
Right, and that's usually, that's usually asked for separately from an actual home inspection. So you'll come out, you'll do the pest inspection. That'll be for any wood boring issues or mice issues or anything like that. And then, of course, you would recommend service based on what you saw, if there was any. Otherwise, you would sign off and we would be good to go. So,
Sure. Yep.
It's kind of scary because, as you say, you've got these termites under the trim and you don't even notice that they're there. So it's almost like you have to be an inspector to find these signs. So if you think that, or you see a termite or a wood-boring insect or something to that effect, as untrained as our eye is, chances are there's something there. Yeah. You might want to have it looked at by a professional. And, John, what is the best phone number? I mean, especially this time of year, I can't imagine that you've got a whole lot of free time. But let's get something scheduled in there. What's the best number to call you and schedule a time to come out and look at it and give them a second eye?
Sure. Phone number 717-233-6144. And the homeowner tip of the week for this week is this time of year, you want to look for what's called swarmers for termites. If you have them inside your house, it means definitely need treatment. A lot of times you just find these, looks like a whole bunch of little wings from the termite swarmers. So if you have that, you definitely need to call a treatment company.
All right. Hey, John, you have an awesome weekend. Thanks again. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was actually very educational this week. So, bugs, pests, Oasis spray. I think we ought to call it Kingsley's Oasis spray, and then we can get residual off of that.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, what are we talking about next week? Do you have any ideas? It's the broker show. So we're gonna be talking about things like how to get rid of your private mortgage insurance, things like that. You'll be welcome to call in and ask me any other questions, because I think Kingsley's going to bail on me. He wants to go party in the Riviera next weekend.
Yeah, no, is it next weekend? No. Next weekend's the 6th. I think we've got a different show. It's the weekend after that.
Oh, it's the weekend after that.
Right.
Okay.
And this is coming from somebody that's going to be bailing on me for 2 weeks. So
that's right.
Yes. So this will be like a fun month.
It will be.
Yeah, a little bit carte blanche, if you will.
Well, what you sign us out this weekend. See if you can remember it.
Real questions.
Yep.
Real people. Real answers.
Works.
Yeah?
Close enough.
All right.
Till next week, guys.
Thanks.
300.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Radio Guy with real estate broker John Rainville. Listen each week at this time and learn all about buying and selling, mortgages, market conditions, property maintenance, and much more. It's brought to you by GSF Mortgage Corporation, EnviroQuest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. It's the Real Estate Radio Guy, Saturday mornings at 8 on Oldies 102.9 and AM 960 WHYL.
You're listening to the Morning Sunshine on Oldies 102.9 WHYL.
Wild. WHYL. Joe, Ricky, Bryce, good time, oldies. WHYL.
Flush ain't no do, and you don't stop. Sure shot, go out to the parking lot and you get in your car and drive real far and you drive all night and then you see a light and it comes right down and lands on the ground and out comes a man from Mars and you try to run but you got a gun cars. You go out and